In this video, we are going over number 6. It says, write the following statement as a biconditional. A prime number has only 1 and itself as the factors. And so, once again, part of being good at math isn't always just about the numbers, but it's about how we go about it. So that's why I put up the textbook as well, and example 5, because it talks about writing and evaluating a biconditional. So we're going to use this to help us solve number 6. So, right, it says a marine biologist continues, writes this conditional. If a seahorse gives birth, then it is male. Since it is true that among seahorses, only males can become pregnant and give birth, should the marine biologist state this as a biconditional in the paper she's writing? So in this example, they do a little more. We just need to write that as biconditional. So remember that we have to first identify the hypothesis P and the conclusion Q. And so the hypothesis P is that, is it going to let me write? P. And then the conclusion Q. And then just like over here in the example, it says, then you can combine them to write the biconditional. And in there, they wrote down what their P was and their Q was and the biconditional. A seahorse gives birth if and only if it is male. And so that's particular. You know it's a biconditional if it has the if and only if. So let's follow those steps. P for the hypothesis. So a prime number has 1 and itself as factors. So sometimes it's easier to identify the conclusion. And so what is our conclusion here? Is that it would only have prime numbers only have 1 and itself as factors. One thing. I'll just write it below then, as factors. So that's really the conclusion of it. So what is the hypothesis is that you have a prime number. So now how are we going to put this together with the if and only if? I'll do that in red because that's what's going to be in the middle. And so we need to first write the conditional of P to Q. So that says if, and then take our hypothesis, and not, so we're going to say if a number is prime, because we have prime number, if a number now we need to write our then part of it, then, because these are big parts of the conditional. If a number is prime, then it only has 1 and itself as factors. Now, if it's a bit biconditional, then it should also be written that if Q, then P. So if a number only has 1 and itself as factors, then it is prime. All right, because we started with our if, and we had our then, and we were writing both if P then Q, and then if Q then P. So essentially the conditional and its converse. And we can see here that, yeah, that's correct. But that's not what they're asking. They want us to write as biconditional. So now essentially we can just rewrite our P then Q. I wanted us to write the converse to get practice, but really we could just we could start off with the first conditional that you can write with the hypothesis and then the conclusion, and then write in if and only if. So here we go. We have a number, and notice if and only if is already here. So in a biconditional, you don't start off with the if as you do in a conditional. We just start off with the statement. A number is prime. So a number is prime if and only if, and then now we write the conclusion. It only has 1 and itself as factors. So let's review what we just did. We first identified the hypothesis and the conclusion, and we found that the hypothesis is P here. You have a prime number, and the conclusion was that prime numbers only have 1 in itself as factors. So you first identified that, and then we wrote the conditional P then Q. So you always start off with your if. And said if a number is prime, then we write down our then. And our then is it only has 1 in itself as factors. We went through and we wrote the converse of Q then P because it's good to recognize, but it was not necessarily needed, because from writing your conditional, then you can go to write your biconditional. And I like to start off with the if and only if part. Computer's being a little silly. So we started off with the if and only if, because that's what a biconditional is. And then we wrote down the hypothesis. We didn't have to start with if. We put a number is prime if and only if, and then we wrote down the conclusion if it only has itself 1 and itself as factors. So there we go. That is your answer to number 6 right there. Okay.